The arrow jutted from Sarah Millfield's shoulder blade, its fletching quivering with each shallow breath. She knelt in the dirt beside her kitchen table, one hand clutching the splintered wood, the other groping blindly toward the shaft piercing her back. "Don't pull it," she whispered, her voice frail as footsteps crunched behind her. Jake Harrow had been riding past the Millfield homestead when her scream sliced through the dusk. Now, he stood frozen in the doorway of the small cabin, hands still gripping the reins he'd dropped in his haste. The woman was a stranger, but her desperation clawed at his chest. "Ma'am," he began. "Don't," Sarah cut him off. "Pull it, and I'll bleed out." "I know it." The cabin told a tale of violence, overturned chairs, scattered papers, a pot of stew simmering on the stove, as if life had halted mid-breath. Through the broken window, Jake saw storm clouds massing, promising rain and wind, perfect cover for men who moved in shadows. Sarah's breathing grew ragged. "My husband, they took him. Said they'd be back for me." Her green eyes, sharp as prairie grass, locked onto Jake's. "You have to leave. Now." But Jake, at 52, wasn't the leaving kind. He'd seen enough blood and heard enough dying words to recognize truth. The arrow was buried deep, angled through muscle and sinew. Moving it wrong would kill her fast, leaving it meant a slower death. "Your name?" he asked, stepping closer despite her protests. "Sarah Millfield," she gasped, wincing as she shifted. "Go. They'll kill you." Outside, Jake's horse nickered, the wind carrying the faint scent of smoke and something sharper, trouble. In the distance, hooves thundered, faint but growing louder over the rising storm. "How many?" Jake asked, peering through the shattered window. "6, maybe 7, Sarah said, her voice fading. "Came at sunset. Said Thomas owed them from a poker game in Deadwood." She coughed, blood flecking her lips. "He never gambled. Never." Jake scanned the landscape, rolling hills, scrub brush, a creek to the east, a weathered barn. A defensible spot if you knew how to hold it. A death trap if you didn't. "Ma'am, I could try getting you on my horse, but that arrow will kill me if you move it wrong," she finished. "I was a nurse in the war. I know punctured lungs." Her breathing had that wet, rattling sound of internal bleeding. The choices were brutal: stay and fight, likely die together, leave her, and she'd die alone, move her, and the arrow might finish her. There was a fourth option, one that turned Jake's stomach. "The arrow," he said slowly. "You said not to pull it." Sarah's eyes widened. "No. The pain alone would be quick," Jake said. "Quicker than bleeding out. Quicker than what they've got planned." The wind rattled the broken window, Sarah's blood dripping steadily onto the floor. Her gaze searched his face, for mercy, perhaps, or the strength to make impossible choices. "My Thomas," she whispered. "If he's gone, staying alive won't bring him back. Dying slow won't honor him either," Jake said softly. Sarah closed her eyes, then opened them with a new resolve. "If you do it, make it clean. One quick pull. Don't let me suffer." Jake nodded, hand hovering near the arrow. But the hoofbeats grew louder, joined by rough laughter and the jingle of spurs. Torches flickered in the dusk beyond the window. "They're back," Sarah breathed. "God help us." 6 riders swept in, their horses' hooves drumming like war cries. The leader, a tall man on a paint horse, raised a hand, and his men fanned out around the cabin. "Sarah Millfield," he called, voice cutting through the wind. "We're back." Jake pressed against the wall, Colt in hand. Sarah was still, the arrow casting a grim shadow. "Maybe she bled out," Callahan, one rider said. "She's breathing," Callahan replied. "I see the lamplight moving. And that horse ain't hers." Jake whispered to Sarah, "When the shooting starts, stay down. Keep that arrow still." Her eyes fluttered. The barn, root cellar behind the hay bales. Safe. Before Jake could ask more, the door burst open. Callahan stood there, a sawed-off shotgun in his hands. Young, maybe 30, with cruel eyes that thrived on pain. Well, well, he said, eyeing Jake's drawn Colt. The lady found a night. Could be, Jake said, voice steady. I've had worse nights. Callahan laughed, sharp and cold. You know what we did to her husband? Strung him up over the creek. Let him think on his debts while the water rose. His smile was a blade. You want to join him? The other riders flanked the windows, weapons trained on Jake. One wrong move, and the cabin would be a slaughterhouse. But Sarah's gaze held something like hope, and Jake couldn't let that go. Let me pull that arrow, he said, and we'll talk debts. Callahan's eyes narrowed. That arrow stays. Keeps her cooperative. He gestured with the shotgun. Drop your iron. Jake set his Colt down but stayed close to Sarah, feeling the heat of her fevered skin. Her breathing was shallow, each exhale a struggle. Please, she whispered, barely audible. Don't let them. I won't, Jake promised softly, then louder, she's dying, Callahan. That arrow's got her lung. You want answers, get them quick. Answers? Callahan laughed. We got what we came for. $1,000 in gold under the barn floor. He leaned against the doorframe, smug. This is just finishing things. Sarah's hand brushed Jake's, pressing a small, worn key into his palm. Their eyes met, and she mouthed, "Seller." Jake understood, the gold under the barn was a decoy. The real treasure was hidden where these killers hadn't looked. Thomas was smarter than you thought, Jake said, pocketing the key. You're celebrating over painted rocks. Callahan's smile faltered. You're lying. Am I? Jake nodded at Sarah. Ask her. Though you might want to pull that arrow first. Hard to talk with a punctured lung. Sarah coughed, blood spraying the floor. Thomas, the letter, she gasped. Tell them. Jake didn't know what letter she meant but played along. Smart woman. Even dying, she's thinking clear. Callahan hesitated, greed wrestling with suspicion. Rain began pattering the roof, the storm closing in. Finally, he lowered his shotgun slightly. All right, old man. Pull it clean, and maybe we all get rich. Jake knelt behind Sarah, hand steady. The arrow had punched through her shoulder blade, its point just below her collarbone, a killing wound if mishandled. This'll hurt, he murmured. Do it, she whispered. Jake gripped the shaft and drove it forward, not out, pushing it through her body in one motion. Sarah's scream merged with a thunderclap. The arrowhead thudded into the floor, pinning the shaft. Callahan lunged forward, furious, but Jake twisted the shaft hard, snapping it. The broken end became a weapon, and he drove it into the nearest rider's throat. The man fell, blood gushing. Jake dove for his Colt as bullets flew, the cabin erupting into chaos. Sarah, freed from the arrow's pin, crawled toward a loose floorboard hiding the root cellar. She pried it open and dropped through, the key clutched in her hand. Jake used the overturned furniture for cover, picking off Callahan's men one by one. When the smoke cleared, 4 bodies littered the floor. Callahan slumped against the doorframe, a red stain spreading across his chest. The gold, he gasped. Where? With Thomas Millfield, Jake said, in the ground where it belongs. Callahan's eyes dimmed forever. In the root cellar, Jake found Sarah beside a chest brimming with gold, coins and nuggets from years of Thomas's prospecting. He was going to surprise me, she said, voice steadier despite her wounds. Buy land in California. Start fresh. Tears cut through the dirt on her face. Jake helped bind her wounds with strips from a dress stored in the cellar. The arrow had missed major arteries, she'd live. They buried Thomas at sunrise on the hill overlooking his claim, then loaded the gold into Jake's saddlebags. Years later, Sarah Harrow, she'd taken Jake's name in a quiet ceremony, told their children the story. Sometimes the thing meant to kill you saves you, she'd say, the arrow scar on her back fading with time. Jake never forgot that moment, pulling the shaft that changed their lives' direction. In a photograph on their mantle, taken on their 10th anniversary, they stand by the creek where Thomas died. The water runs clear now.